Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for hitting that play button for another episode of the Heady Coleman Podcast, where I sit down with fabulous people to help go win conversations. Go win is being consistent and doing the right things that allow for you to achieve the wins you have defined for your life so that you can live out your greatest story. Now, I want three things to happen when you listen in on the Heady Coleman Podcast. One, I want you to learn. Not only learn something, but learn about people who I think have amazing stories. The second thing is I want you to be inspired to take action on whatever that win is that you have defined for your life. I want you to take action on it today. As soon as you finish listening to this podcast, go take action. And the third thing is community. I want all of us who have wins to come together and be able to support one another, achieve those wins so that we can all live out our best story. Today, ladies and gentlemen, today it's one of those days where you just have amazing people come into your presence. And if you like me right now, I got a glass of water. I'm sweating because I'm just nervous that I don't want to mess it up, y'all. I want to ask the right questions. I got my man, Norman Markland, in the building, in the studio, y'all. How you doing, Norman?
Man, I'm doing good. I cannot complain. Just want to thank you for having me, man. You've always been a great influence and mentor in my life, man. So thankful to be here, man. I'm doing good.
Hey, I'm honored. I'm honored to be sitting across from you and just to be able to learn from you, to be inspired by you. And, you know, we're already in community together.
Right.
You know, and so just to continue to do those things. Man, tell me, let's just jump right into it. Okay. You don't mind? And people will learn about you as we go. What did you see yourself being when you was a kid? Like, what did you dream about when you was a kid?
Yeah, so, I come from a low-income family, single-parent household, and so I really didn't have a lot of exposure to different careers and opportunities growing up. So when I was growing up, of course, I was like many kids, was very involved in sports. So I basically, through education, thought like, being anything with some type of engineering. So I actually thought I was going to be a computer engineer. So when I was in high school, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a computer engineer. So when I got to college,
Where'd you go to high school?
I'm originally from Lawton,
Okay.
Oklahoma. Shout out to Lawton.
Wait a second. Did you graduate from Lawton?
I graduated from Lawton High School. Yeah. So I didn't know, back then we didn't have a lot of exposure to higher education. So I was just like, yeah, I think I probably looked something up or thought, I'm going to be a computer engineer because they make a lot of money until I got to college and took college algebra for business. And so that kind of, that whole goals and aspirations fell really fast.
Yeah.
And so I kind of was always at this crossroads in life, right? And so I remember being a freshman in college and thinking like, man, like I just want to work in the community. Like that's what I know best. I come from the community. The community saved me. And so, ironically, all of my career paths have been centered around community, whether it's been in higher ed or the nonprofit sector, and now with the state. And so, I never really kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I kind of purposely fell into positions that were very fulfilling for me.
Got you.
Yeah.
Now, when you say work in the community, tell me what that means to you.
Yeah. So I'm a thinker, right? So growing up in Lawton again. Very impoverished communities, very, very community based. When we talk about the peers I grew up with, it's very multicultural, very diverse. And so for me, looking back on my life, I always have these questions that kind of keep me up at night, like my passion and my purpose. And so I remember it was a lot of people that pulled me to the side and really kind of led me into organizations that created this sense of belonging for me, this sense of community. So I always looked at what is it about things that make people successful versus other people? So I come from a community that has high crime rate, a lot of gang activity, a lot of impoverished families. So what was it about me that afforded me the opportunity to break a lot of those cycles of generational cycles? And a lot of that was the organizations and the community I was involved in. And those communities really helped mold me. So when I thought of what can I do? All I knew was the community. So I wanted just to work in the community, whatever job, whatever major that looked like, I wanted to be involved in that. And so luckily for me, I've been fortunate to have a lot of opportunities that led me to my purpose, right? It led me to really serving and working with people that may be traditionally underserved. So that's my calling and that's my purpose, and I've just been fortunate to bask in it for a long time.
That's cool. Now, where'd you end up going to college?
So I graduated Lawton High School, went to University of Central Oklahoma, first generation college student. Shout out to UCO, Bronchos. So,
come on, Broncos. Now, OU, did you have OU connection?
I did. So I ended up graduating from UCO, and I got my first master's at OU.
Well, where'd you get your second and third and fourth?
So funny, look, listen, like people gonna think like, oh, he got out. Look, all the things I've done have been mirrored behaviors. Like I always seen someone, and I was like, I want to be like that person, and I was just like, hey, like what did they do to get to where they want to be?
Yeah.
And so after, like I had these crossroad moments, and like my senior year, I was very involved at UCO on campus. I was a leader, but I was coming up to graduation, and like everyone was like, well, what are you gonna do? Where you gonna work? And I was like, I ain't got no job lined up. Yeah. So I had a mentor. I always had mentors, somebody that seen more in me that I seen in myself, and they always just poured into me. And again, I'm thankful to be here because of people that always just planted those seeds in me. So like, she was like, well, why don't you you're like a super student, like, right? You like to be in a union, you like to talk, and you like to be involved in every activity. You know those students. I was one of those. So I was like, why don't you just work at a university? I was like, oh, you can do that? So it's like, go get your master's in higher education. So that was my first master's, and I ended up working at OU after that.
Oh, what did you do at OU?
So I was the director of Upper Bound, which is
really?
a TRIO program. Yeah, shout out to TRIO. So funny story. So I was a counselor. I was a residential tutor advisor, RTA, for the UCO Upper Bound program. And that was like my junior and senior year. So I was a counselor during the summer, our 6-week summer program. Pamela Edwards, Rosario Riley, they ran that program. So again, I'm working with kids from South Star Spencer, Crooked Oak, and Capitol Hill. So at that moment, I was like, wow, these kids are like me. These kids, so it was like kind of my light bulb moment in college where I was like, oh, I want to work with kids that grew up in similar environments that me, because I feel like I can be a good example for them. So that was my kind of like, oh, this is what I want to do for a living, right? Mm-hmm. And then I was like, well, how do I get there? And so I ended up, being fortunate to fall into a position of leadership immediately after I got my master's. And I was a director of Upper Bound at the University of Oklahoma for 8 years.
First of all, it doesn't even feel like you've been around 8 years.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I'm a lot older than I look.
Yeah, like 8 years. Then how long were you at Pivot?
So I was at Pivot is 6, almost 7 years. Yeah, I just left Pivot. So
wow.
So I fell in. Pivot was formerly Youth Services for Oklahoma County, and I was at OU, and I was at another crossroad, and I was like, man, like, what do I want to do? And I always have these probing challenges in my head. And what I was finding is that a lot of people, my students, were matriculating into higher ed, and some of them weren't becoming successful. They weren't transitioning from freshman to sophomore year. So I was like, what was about that didn't allow them to be successful? And what I found was the psychological part. So I was like, well, what do I want to stay in higher ed, or do I want to work more entrenched in the community so I can kind of build the foundation to help them become successful? So I looked at like, what were my experiences and what allowed me to overcome them to become successful. So I made this decision to jump out of higher ed and get into the nonprofit sector, which at the time it was Youth Service Oklahoma County. And I was like, well, I probably need and I had a friend, Cameron Leach, was a therapist. He was like, you should go look into counseling. You could really learn like how the psychological effects of behavior and how that translates into a systemic environment. So that's what my goal was, to go into counseling. I ended up going to the Langston University Oklahoma City campus, and I got that job I was a youth services for Oklahoma County, and then we rebranded to Pivot. One of the best decisions I made, because what it did was allow me to understand from an environmental, generational trauma lens of what that looks like in this system in these systems. So like my kids, a lot of them weren't matriculating from freshman to sophomore year because they didn't feel like they had a sense of belonging. Mm-hmm. When they hit adversity, they would kind of revert back to those trauma responses, the feeling of isolated, imposter syndrome, and not just feeling like they belong in that environment with 300 kids. And that's like, how do we teach them to persevere through that? What does that look like, right? Mm-hmm. So let's make meaning of our experiences to develop purpose to allow us to be successful. So that was my kind of passion, and so I kind of did that within Pivot, working in the housing sector, the homeless population, youth that are transitioning out, really helping them garner life skills that are essential, and really coordinating resources to allow them to live independently. So I did that for 7 years.
You killed it for 7 years.
Yeah.
You killed it for 8. Then you came and did 7 more. Now you.
Yeah.
Now where are you at now?
So now recently, just transitioned into the Oklahoma Department of Human Services as the new director of the Workforce Hope Community Center off of Northwest 10th and Rockwell. So it's just been there for over a month, and I'm really looking forward again to working within this system, working within this space to really help people that are again, traditionally underserved gain access to long-term employment. So really, like, how do we create cross-sector partnerships and collaborations with different partners to allow people to navigate some of their barriers, and we can help them eliminate that barrier so they can have long-term engagement with the workforce.
Yeah, nice. Now, let's kind of work backwards.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing, I almost feel like almost from the beginning you've had roles as what somebody would define as a leader, like to be a director. Automatically, we would say that that's a leadership role.
Yeah.
Now, I do believe that sometimes people have roles and they're not very good leaders.
Yeah.
Right. And so the only reason I'm following this person is because of that role, not that they've done anything that I would warrant them to be a leader. Right.
Right.
But in your role, I don't like from what I know of you. I don't think that's you. Like I feel like you probably came into that role and you did what I see as a leader. A leader is somebody who comes in and they serve the team in order to move forward in whatever the win is for that organization or the mission of that, right?
Yeah.
When you came to OU as the director of Upper Bound, what were some of the things that you had to maybe learn to be consistent in order to get the most out of your team, in order to fulfill the job, the duty of whatever that mission was? Or something that you may have already knew that when you go in, you were going to try to be consistent in doing these things. And if you don't get all that, we'll follow back up.
So when I was at OU, I was really young. So learning the landscape of higher education, really learning how to communicate in a very professional way, learning how to be professional. In different environments. And so one of the things I always knew that comes second nature is the community. But how do you really create an environment where you can help empower your staff and also allow them to respect you? So I was very young, and so I always felt like I had to present myself in a way that was super professional. So I always dressed up. And that's why I always dress up now, is because I have a very youthful spirit and youthful look. So just the professionalism is something that I had to learn, really like the professional language and really how to use empowering, encouraging words and really delegate, because I'm a doer. So really and that's still a process. So really learning how to empower other people. And I really typically done that by leading by example. I really don't know any other way. Is really I call it being in the trenches, like being in the moment, being in there with the community. And I think that builds a certain amount of level of rapport and respect among staff here, where people know that I'm genuine and I'm authentic. And so I've always just tried to lead with integrity. And so to answer your question, the biggest thing I learned was really the professionalism, like how to communicate, being a first generation student, like what that looks like in a leadership role when everyone's looking at you. So learning different levels of adaptation when it comes to communication. There's a certain way you communicate to parents. There's a certain way you connect with the kids. There's a certain way you connect with your staff. And then there's a certain way you connect with other professional individuals within the university setting.
Yeah. So let's talk about that communication piece. Like, hey, when I'm in a professional setting, if I'm dealing with parents, if I'm dealing with youth, is that a natural thing? How do you learn that? Because have you ever been around people who they try to do that, but it doesn't? Yeah. It doesn't feel natural. You can tell. Like, how did you learn to do that? Or is that just something you feel like some people are gifted at and some aren't?
So I think I would say this. I learned that I'm fortunate to come from a very diverse background. I mentioned that I grew up in law, but before that, I was on a military base. When my parents were together, my stepfather and my mom. So I grew up around very diverse cultures. So, but then I moved to America. Well, I was on an Army base, then I moved to Lawton, and then I moved to Texas, then I moved to Oklahoma. So I have a vast experience with culture, and I have been around multiple diverse people. So I think that's how that has allowed me to learn how to adapt in different environments. I know some people that are raised in silos, very homogenous communities, they only see one thing and they may be only naturally be able to identify with one group of people. But for me, I've had a lot of experience, like being in the military, being around different states and countries, and coming from Panama, like I seen what it was like to have that type of culture, and then coming here, and then coming to college in the city, Oklahoma City, which is extremely segregated, like I got to see. So it allowed me to learn like different levels of like adaptation and assimilation, but also being authentic. So it's allowed me to really like connect with different type of people using my experiences. And I think this just comes natural to me. And I think I owe that to just my experiences growing up, right?
So it's not so much, it comes natural, it's more so because of your experiences,
yes,
right?
Definitely, yeah.
When I think about natural, it's like, I don't know, it's just something that's just happened, right?
Yeah.
But what I hear you're saying, and I love the point that you're making, is like, I've just been around a whole bunch of different types of people. And from that, I've learned to adjust depending on who I'm around.
Exactly, yes.
Now that I'm a leader and I have to interact with these different types of people, it just comes natural for me to understand, oh, here I can talk. I need to speak on a professional whatever.
Yes.
Here I need to talk to parents. I know how to talk to parents. I can get down with the young people.
And let me speak to that excellent point, and just to highlight what you're saying. Like, for me, I take pride in, like, when you talk about servant leadership and you talk about serving people, right? Not to get all scripture, but like loving thy neighbor. Like, I grew up around, sometimes in the professional set, I could be around investors that make a lot of money, but also be in the community where I was raised that may have people that have, criminal records. And to me, like, the importance, and I value connecting with anybody, not based off of where they are in life. So I learned that by really just growing up around different type of people, and really not like looking down on anybody, and keeping that same motto and value today. And that's why I think it affords me a lot of opportunity and success in those environments when it comes to working with different populations of people. So I'm a connector, and I feel like God's like, I want you to be a bridge to people, and I really pride myself on that, and being able to identify and relate to different demographics of people.
Yeah, that's good. Now coming into OU Upper Bound young, I feel like now that I'm listening to your story even more, has paid you great dividends, right? Because you got to, when somebody hires somebody young, it's saying, hey, I'm willing to let you mess up. Like, especially if that person understands, like, oh, this person's young, but I can see in them the ability to do whatever. Do you see that? And I feel like you've already kind of said that, but do you see that has been an advantage for you? Because you started young, you can say, well, I was at OU 8 years, and you had a pretty substantial role coming in early.
Yeah, I think it's really got me to where I am now. And in every situation, there's always barriers, more so like systemic barriers, and navigating the relationships, and how the unwritten rules and those values are things that organizations may have. So learning how to navigate that in different spaces, like, has really, being a young person, learning that has really afforded me a lot of success, like you said, and just like building that up to really focusing on my purpose, and not looking at like the title or the relationship part of it, but just focusing on the work has really got me to a place where I feel like there's some merit to the work I've done, and just being consistent in that has really provided me a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. So talking about communication, another thing you talked about was empowering the people that are on your team. You said that one of the ways that you empower them is by you leading by example. Is that the way that you said that?
Yeah. So like, I call it, being in the trenches and getting in the weeds of things. And like, a lot of it is just like serving. And like, you always had to hear those people, like those quotes and those memes, like, you should treat the janitor the same way you treat the CEO. Like, I really value that, because I have people in my family that are janitors. Like, I have people that I personally like know that have these experiences that I would never like separate myself from. So like, when it comes to like leadership, I really feel like the way I lead is just by leading by example, right? This is how we're going to treat people. This is how we work through conflict. Like, this is how we come together. And, I'm not perfect, but I feel like that's one of the areas that I feel like I've been able to really be a leader in, is by showing people, like, even though we have these differences, like, let's break that down and really like work through, because most of the time we have more in common than we have difference. So I, pride myself on having some of those crucial, critical conversations at time when there's needed.
Do you think that when people see you working in the trenches, right, and they're working for you, do you feel like you have to come back behind them and explain to them like, hey, I want you to do what I do, or do you think people just naturally tend to follow the example that's set before them?
Yeah, I think both. I'd never tell someone to do something they're not comfortable in, but when it comes back to empowering, I want to be an educator, and I want to be able to be a connector of people, right? So, like, in the trenches, I feel like I learn the most. And so how can I use that to educate other people to break down those barriers? So when it comes to staff, I feel like if they see the leader, one of the leaders do it, then they're more likely to do it. And if they don't, they'll go get the leader because they feel like they have that rapport.
Yeah.
And that leader can be that bridge to bring those people together, right?
Yeah.
So that's really what I try to utilize that for, is to build rapport with people and allow them to break down those barriers so we can get things done.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's real good.
Yeah.
That's real good.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you track? So, for example, I try to write 1,000 handwritten notes.
Man, I need to do that,
a
man.
year.
That's cold. No.
Is there anything that you track in order that you feel like helps you create that opportunity to serve other people? And I think that in the way for me to better serve people is to create influence. A handwritten note to me, whenever I write somebody a handwritten note, they get it, and it's helping create some influence.
Yeah.
Not so that I can go tell them what to do, but it allows for me to better serve them.
Yeah.
Is there anything like something intentional like that you do that you track?
I don't track. I need to track.
Okay.
But I'm very intentional about connecting in conversations and like active listening and like even like the fostering and nurturing relationships, the people that I happen to be intimate or like have a relationship with, I try to foster those things by being consistent. So it's definitely something I probably need to do better at tracking. But even like I have friends that are childhood friends that, you know, I'm able to still have a relationship with, even though our lives may have went in separate directions, right? So I still honor those things because at one point they were very meaningful and still meaningful to me. So, and then currently anybody I meet, I'm trying to be very intentional about making them a priority and making sure like when they have that, when we have an engagement, that experience is something that's very empowering. So I hope the people that have worked with me have had that experience with me. Just some of those honest, crucial conversations and like being authentic and positive self-regard, like accepting people for who they are and helping them understand like their purpose. So I really try to do that within my profession and also through the community work I do in my nonprofit and stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What's the scariest thing about being a leader?
The scariest thing is the expectations. Like oftentimes it's the expectations I put on myself. And I think the higher you go, the more recognizable you are. I think that's breeding ground for criticism. And as a leader, you know, you have to be the one, you have to kind of be the first, not always, but you want to be the one that's known for being the first one and the last one to lead, but also the one that, empowers staff and not takes credit, but also when it's time for adversity, be able to show up and work through. So just those things are difficult when it's time. When everyone looking at you and you're the one that's supposed to have the answers, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure. And so now that I am growing, I'm trying to like embrace the role of being the face and being a leader, being more recognizable in the community. Because I've done the background work, I've done the work in the community, but now as it become more the face, it's a little intimidating. So I'm trying to be a little more purposeful, like this is a part of the process, right? And like being more confident in that realm. Yeah.
What do you do when you don't have the answer? What have you learned to do?
So I figure it out. So like one of the good things about I go and oftentimes I learn from trial and error.
Yeah.
Luckily, knock on wood, I've never made that big of a mistake that has cost me my job or put me at risk. But typically, I try to navigate things by, if I don't know it, then I find someone that does know it. And I'm really good at connecting with people that are subject matter experts in different things. So I always try to lean on my relationships to really get me to where I want to be.
Yeah. What do you tell your team when you don't know the answer? Do you tell them you don't know the answer?
Yeah, I don't mind being. See, that's the thing about me. I don't mind being vulnerable, and I don't mind not knowing, right? And so, but I can find out, and I tell the team like, hey, we're gonna let's find that out. Let's go through that together, right?
Yeah.
Or what do you think? Or like, what's your idea?
Yeah.
And so, selfishly, I don't really take a lot of credit, and I think this is how I am, man. And like, so for me, being a collaboration, like the cornerstone of diversity and inclusivity is like really like including those voices. So if I don't know, I don't mind leaning on someone that may know more than me or know someone that knows.
Yeah. No, that's good. Let's go back to Norman in high school. What was Norman in high school like?
Woo! Man, actually in high school I was all right. So in middle school, that's like so again, I was,
Wait a second. So middle school, you was a little bit more rambunctious?
I wasn't rambunctious. I just was easily influenced. I would say that.
Okay.
Again, I didn't have a great relationship with my biological father, so like I was just like any other adolescents, went through those transitional years where it was difficult, like making decisions, fostering and knowing who I was as a young man. I would say I was not as a leader as I should have been. I was a little bit of a follower. But again, I've always had older people that pulled me to the side and poured into me. Like I give you an example. My freshman year, I was partying and hanging out. Back when they had the 2X, 3X tees, I was wearing those. And
the big tees on.
And I had a lady from Trio, Title IX program, Carla Woods, pulled me to the side and said,
"Where was this at?"
At UCO, freshman year, right out of. So I was hanging out.
Oh, freshman year of college.
Freshman year of college.
Okay.
Not to fast forward to college, but I was hanging out every night, and I always had someone pull me to a side. This time it was Carla Woods, and basically was like, "You're better than you need to be in this environment." So back in high school, I was fortunate to be. I was around the wrong crowd, and there was a lady that pulled me into her office. I can't remember the counselor's name, but she showed me Oklahoma Promise, and she talked to me about Oklahoma Promise and got me involved with educational talent search. And after that, I started going on college trips. I came up here to UCO, Langston, and OU, and I was like, wow, like there's actually life outside of Lawton. And I was fortunate to get in talent search, which really created a sense of like surrounding me with other kids that were college bound. Yeah. So that, again, that community piece, that's why I look back and I'm like, I have to recreate that. And that's it right there. That's my pocket. That's my purpose.
Yeah.
So
was that from the transition from middle school to high school? How early was that into high school that she had to pull you aside?
That was sophomore year.
Your sophomore year?
Yeah. Yeah. And at that time, unfortunately, I had a lot of friends who were deviating into gangs, and it was those transactional years where you're like figuring out what you want to do. So now, like I know those years are very formidable, right? As a therapist, and like so, being a part, like going to Kojak and speaking to the younger men there, like. I want to be an impression because I didn't see a lot of black men that had professions that carried themselves in a very professional way, that were married. I didn't see a lot of that. So what I seen was contradicting to that. So let me be a representation for that. So I realized like the gap, and I was like, well, there's just a lack of access and opportunity. So like, how do I represent that, right? So I started getting very purposeful based off some of my experiences. But and that's why I don't try to judge. I just try to really be a connector. And like you always do say, love on people and pour into people, because I'm literally one mistake away from not being here, right? I was just always fortunate to be surrounded by people that always looked out for me and poured into me, even when I didn't know what I was capable of. Yeah.
Do you intentionally seek out mentorship?
Oh, yeah, I try to.
When did that start for you?
That started, my senior year. Junior year in college, I got my first job was Oklahoma City Parks and Recreation. And I met a man, he's still my mentor today, Christopher Hamilton. He was a great mentor. He's the director of recreational services, I believe, for Oklahoma City Parks and Rec. He was the first man that I seen in person talk positively about being married and his kids. And he really influenced me to like want to be a better man. And so now, as my journey has gone on, I've met other men that look like me that represent something that I want to represent. You're one of them, So I honor that, and just like that pipeline of like what masculinity and manhood looks like, particularly for the black male community. And I want to be a representation. And so I mentor a lot of young males. I have a foundation that specifically targets black men that are graduating high school. So really just breaking down some of those stigmas and recreating that through a therapeutic and successful process.
Yeah, that's good. So, how do you Does mentorship just happen for you, or do you look at somebody and say, okay, I intentionally want to, and sometimes it's not that we got to meet every day, right?
Yeah.
Do you intentionally go after those people or seek them out, or is it kind of like I just watch and let them mentor from a distance, and maybe both?
It's a little bit of both. I've had people that has intentionally seeked me out, and then I have seek people out, or I just throw the mentor tag on somebody. So I see them and I like the way they move. I like the way they carry themselves. I like what they represent, and I may not be there, but I want to be something like that.
Yeah.
And so I intentionally try to seek out those relationships, especially from older men that may be a little more experienced than me. So definitely, and I don't mind like putting myself out there and say, hey, and I try to do that for the younger youth as well.
Yeah.
So
let's go back to, you said Carla. Was it Carla
Wood? Yeah,
Carla
I
Wood.
just seen her too at Juneteenth.
Freshman in college, she pulls you aside. Hey, this isn't the crowd. You need to be with that crowd. One of the things that whenever I do a go-in workshop, we oftentimes talk about the go-in approach. And the go-in approach are these right things that I feel like regardless of whatever your win is, you need to be consistent in doing these 4 things. And one of those things is being around the right people. You know, but consistently just placing yourself amongst the right people. And so when you said like, this isn't the group, this is the group. What was that group? Like who were these people? Was it an association, organization, or just?
Yeah, and it don't even have to be a group. Like I try to be very authentic and very upfront. Like you can still have your group of friends, but you also need to like create an environment that's really conducive to what you want to be. So for example, so that organization was Trio. It was like joining fraternity. It was like, so in that fraternity, what were the values and what were the culture in that specific organization? For Trio, it was like college, grad school. It was like study skills. And so being in that framework allowed me to develop skills that were conducive for that particular space, right? And so you can still have friends, but you also need to balance that out with wherever you want to go is to surround yourself with a framework that's conducive for that particular goal you're trying to reach. And so like really just adaptive functioning skills, like learning how to have balance and learning really how to like engage to where you can develop behaviors and skills that will project you to where you want to be. Because it's really just about behaviors, like, because cognitively, you're going to mimic the behaviors that are around you. Unfortunately, if you're living in an environment, there are higher chances of you to have behaviors synonymous with that environment. But also, like, how do we get you into another environment to allow you to recreate or unlearn and develop new behaviors? So I was fortunate to always have people that kind of surrounded me with a sense of community that allowed me to identify and develop patterns of behaviors.
Now, I mean, now hindsight looking back, right? Yeah. You can say that. For those young men who may be listening to this, or older men, like sometimes we oftentimes talk about young men, but sometimes it's even older men who need these same things. Where would you tell them to start? What does that look like?
As a therapist, I always try to start with knowledge of self, and really doing a self-evaluation of who you are and where you come from and why you do the things you do. And then really try to unpack that and really try to like develop patterns, identify patterns of behavior, and then unlearn some things and relearn some things that allow you to become successful. So like self-awareness is so critical because a lot of the things we do are very subconscious. It's very much conditioned into us from early childhood, right? So like awareness is critical. And not saying you need to be perfect, but moving the needle on where you want to be is very conducive. So accountability, like people that are going to hold you accountable, people that are going to pour into you. So I always try to lead with that, but not like telling people they need to like change who they are as a person, but like let's just be honest, like live your truth, but also raise awareness and parallel that with where you want to be.
That's good.
Yeah.
One tip on kind of helping someone self-evaluate.
Mm-hmm. One tip. So from a trauma lens is like asking yourself like what happened to you, what happened to me, instead of like what's wrong, right? And like a lot of times we get stigmatized by society, we shame, we guilt, and a lot of times we internalize that, especially if trauma happened early on. So understanding that, adverse childhood experience, we all go through traumatic experience, some more than others, but like how can we make meaning of that? Like how do we live authentically in our truths and use that as your purpose, right? I'm a fond believer, like the things that I went through were just gateways to my purpose to help other people And so if we look at our audience, a lot of times we'll focus on our algorithm, like the things that we attract, but there's an audience that may not know that are dealing with something that you deal with. So if you focus on that and you focus on purpose every day, you're going to attract the people and you're going to live in fulfillment because you're going to be doing things that other people need to learn. And so when I talk to people, it's just really knowledge of self. And then once you have knowledge of self, you raise your awareness and you accept your truth, and then you make meaning of it and you help other people that may have been through the same situation as you.
Come on. So you doctor.
Man,
Huh?
and that's why I like the therapy part, especially when it comes to like historical trauma, family structure, and what that looks like from a community behavior lens. Like, I'm so passionate about it. And like, how can we break those down to like create systems that are inclusive and conducive for all communities? Like, that's something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
So on the individual, how does the individuals fall within the systems they create? How can they recreate systems and allow them to be successful? And it's really just about awareness, right? And then breaking that down and like learning new behaviors that are very conducive for long-term success. So awareness is big key, because a lot of us are just subconsciously doing things that we've seen get done or what was programmed into us, and we just think it's reality. But unpacking that and accepting other people's reality and working together to make change is important to me.
And I think for me, that's when I think about go in and this concept of what this looks like, it is about changing behavior. That's what I'm saying. Like, what are those right things you need to be consistent in order to do what?
Yeah.
Even when it comes to changing behavior.
Yeah.
If I want to wake up and be a healthier person, I got to change the way I eat. I got to change the way that I exercise. And sometimes those things allow for you to begin to move in a place of success, right? Just by changing some of those things. So what are those other things? Writing handwritten notes. Change my behavior in a sense of how I see people, or being intentional about seeing people, right? And so, I love that. I love that. And I mean, for me, I had to do that in my own personal life, in the sense of like, if I was gonna do anything, I had to start changing the way that I did X, Y, Z, whatever those things are. So, and then as a leader, I think when serving people, being able to have this wisdom, this insight, to be able to do it. I love this. You getting this master's or getting a degree in this, as far as counseling goes, because now you can kind of help formulate those questions to ask people, which is, oftentimes it starts with a question.
Right, and like understanding the why, the developmental lens of that. Especially in system structure, like that's something I've learned, and like how can we break that down into like help people identify the change behavior. I
always say in the Going Workshops we talk about your why, when we say that if you lose your why, you lose your way. And so it's just so important, because sometimes we can forget, and then you need to go back to the why in order to get back on the, like, man, why in the world do I want to lose this weight? Well, I want to be healthy and be around for a long time, right, to continue to serve people. So
if you look at motivation, and you look at, like, not to get all cognitive scientists, but like if you look at brain patterns, if you look at motivation or why you do the things you do, a lot of times it's to most of us have this need for acceptance and validation and just a sense of belonging. Like if you create your own community through purpose, like even if you have to go beyond your circle of influence, like that's the purpose, right? And that'll give you, so when you talk about losing weight, once you put purpose onto it, like, oh, well, somebody's watching me, or I've motivated other people, like that's what it comes. You're like, okay, like, and really helping people find that. That gives them more intrinsic and external motivation. Now
there's one person that I know that you're definitely looking to serve each and every day, and that's your daughter.
My God, man.
What is it like to be a father?
Man, so it's tough. Just to be vulnerable, it's tough. It's interesting, not growing up with a dad consistently. Like another thing I'm passionate about is like my daughter, and like, how do I be a father? What does that look like? How do I be emotionally available? Like, what does that look like, especially for a little? How do I model a behavior that she can then grow up and mimic? So it's anxious, right? But it's new. So again, in all these new experiences I'm having, I'm learning. But I've always figured it out, and I'm figuring it out. So I never try to come off as like I know it all. It's like a process. So my daughter's great. She's super smart. So the balance of, the technology and being engaged and having a little young girl, being, like that process. And it's beautiful. It's tough, though. I have a lot more respect for single mothers and parents in general, like it's taught me a lot. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like she has taught me so much about myself. It's a process of being selfless. And I have a brother that's 9 years old younger than me. So I was kind of raised as the only child. So like having a daughter, like changing like my responsibilities and prioritizing is something that I'm learning. But it's fun, man. It's work though.
Going back to my favorite question, what is something that you try to be consistent in to be the best father?
Yeah, just time. This is in work too. I'm very engaging. I'm very youthful. I feel like I have a gift for youth, and so like doing fun things, like going on activities, like exposing her to different things that are fun is something I feel like I'm very intentional about. Being involved in her school, just creating that environment where we can engage and connect, and that she knows that I'm consistent and I'm there for her.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's good. Tell me a leader that you admire, and you've had the opportunity to sit down with them. What are the questions that you're asking them?
So, man, I have people that I follow. You're one of them that have the great ability to communicate across sectors, across communities. And that's something that I feel like I want to be more confident and comfortable in. So I would say Waylon Cubitt is just his ability to like foster conversations and be authentic and identify with different populations of people is something that I admire. And so I always try to challenge myself to be more open to like accepting people and understanding people's realities so I can connect with them. And so those conversations, like what does that look like? I see you guys model that so well. So that's something I want to learn more of. Like how do I, especially in the leadership role, now that I'm growing as a leader, I'm around different socioeconomic status, people that have different types of levels of influence. Like what does that look like for me getting out of my comfort zone and fostering those relationships and conversations? So I would say you're one of those, and definitely Waylon. There's some people, my other mentor, Brandon Brooks, people that do it so well, and I feel like connect with different demographics of people. I love that about you guys.
Yeah.
Like I see you do it all the time. Like just how you pour into people, man. Like what does that look like, right, from a leadership lens? And like that's something I want to model and mimic that you guys do so well.
Yeah. Oh man, well I appreciate that, but no, and I think that's true. Like if you really want to influence a big population of people, right? I think you got to definitely have that ability to interact with different types of people, right? And so for me, I think what I've learned is just loving people is just people are all people.
Yeah, I see you go into different rooms and be able to, still serve. And that's something that's commendable to me.
Yeah. It's just people, man. And I think that's one of the things. I just try not to look at them too differently. Yeah. Like depending on like if they're homeless or if they're living in wherever.
And a lot of times we normalize our environment, so we may feel uncomfortable going around different communities of people, right? So like you guys, how you model that being a bridge, like I feel like God's calling me to do that more. Like be a connector. Like there's just certain information that the other side won't get. Like you be in the middle and bring people together. By modeling that, right? Like connecting with people, no matter what their political, economic affiliations are. The purpose, they're still individuals. So hopefully we can model that, right? So I look at you guys as great examples of that.
And I think the work that you're going to be doing with the Hope Center, right? Yeah. Has to be that.
Yes. And that's why. That's why I'm looking at y'all. I need some help. Right.
No, so like how
do I like right now in this space we're in, we're creating this multi-hub facility that will break down barriers and eliminate external factors to help people engage in long-term employment. So we're talking about a high transient community, people that are experiencing homelessness, people that are getting out of incarceration, different sectors of people, but we also want to engage those people to where they can be successful, right? So they can really like unpack their trauma, get through their barriers, and have long-term independency, right? So how do I articulate their needs to a community that has leverage and influence and resources, right? How can I bridge that gap to create a successful environment where everybody can really apply resources to become where they want to be? So
No, that's good, man. I'm excited about watching you. So, and then whatever I can do to help, I'm all in for it.
Yeah.
Man, you know, one of the things I was thinking about with you, and I wrote this down, and hopefully I read it right. You know how you write a question, then you read it, and you're like, man, I don't think that was right the way I wanted to say that. But what have you learned the key to be to making transitions, like high school to college, single to married, pivot to the state? Yeah. Like, when I think about you, these different transitions, what is the key to that? Man, what have you learned in doing it?
Oh, well, so that's a great question. I'm not good at it because I'm a very creature of habit, and I'm an Enneagram 6, so it's like I have to have a plan, right?
Yeah.
So like I have anxiety, and it's like, so transitions are so hard for me. But I would say what I've learned is that, like J. Cole says, there's beauty in the struggle. Like the process is, and I heard, the process is really the goal, right?
Yeah.
And so we oftentimes create these outcomes that society projects on us, and like we have to be married by this time or this. And now I've learned like what success looks like to me, and maybe it's not a linear process. It may be up and down, right? So like there's a time for everything, and just being present. And I try to do that. It's hard. So trying to be present and enjoy the seasons you're in, and be mindful of that, and like how to teach other people of that. Like life is just a process. Yeah. And those transitions are where you probably, those uncertain, those ambiguous moments are probably where you're going to learn the most. It don't feel good, but like, how do we become comfortable with being uncomfortable? Like, and as we transition, how do we grow, and how do we redefine ourselves to be a part of this process? So I'm a work in progress. And those transitions, I'm literally going through them now, and it's challenging, but I think in the long run, you don't want to be stagnant, right? You want to continue to push yourself forward. You want to continue to grow, and that's so imperative as a leader. So enjoy the process, man. Focus on one day at a time. Break it down. Objectify your life, and really just enjoy the moment, and be a part of the highs and the lows, because that's what life is. It's not all success. I tell young people, like, you guys are going through this for a reason. Like, where you are now is part of some type of plan. You just have to embrace it, and you have to be in the moment. And one day you're going to get through it. One day you're going to come back down and go high. So never get too high, never get too low. Like, there's beauty in the struggle. Like, there's beauty in that, because the struggle is really going to define who you are. You're going to look back and be like, man, I was resilient. I got through that adversity, and it's taught me so much. Unfortunately, like, you got to go through those things to be on the other side, to be able to have that purpose. So trying as best as possible to embrace those moments and lead by example. And I know on the outside it may look like peaches and cream, but it's not. Like, social media paint this perception. But
for sure.
It's tough. I mean, it's tough. It's tough taking leaps of faith. I mean, but that's what like, if it was easy, everybody would do it. So
because you never know what's on the other side.
You never know what's on the other side.
Like,
you know, like, man. I'm currently engaged. It's like, okay, like, all these fears is like, but keep going. Just keep going. Take it one day at a time.
Yeah, take it one day at a time.
It's like, you look back like, it wasn't that bad.
No, once you get to the place where you can look back.
At least I didn't die. Like, right, so like, just gotta keep.
I got a little bit more wisdom in my life.
Because our just again, not go back to psychology, brain development. Like, we want our natural instincts want to keep us safe, right? We want to stay in this equilibrium, but like, grow, push yourself, right? And then, like, especially if you have prosperity to be a better person. So
well, you said being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that's something that I learned a long time ago. If you're gonna make some moves, you're gonna have to put yourself in uncomfortable positions.
And you can start small. You can start by doing something different, talking to somebody that may work with you normally wouldn't talk to, because you naturally gravitate what's like you. You're gonna attract. But I always do, doing diversity trainings and conversations and public speaking events, like, do something that's intentionally, that's something that you won't naturally do. Like, just follow your patterns, the people you surround yourself. We are more likely to surround ourselves with people that mimic who we are, but go outside of that, challenge yourself to go outside of that, and just try it. Just try something small, right? Have lunch with somebody you weren't used to having lunch with, and see how it goes. Just try it.
For sure. I remember when I first took the role as up at the Chamber of Commerce, one of the things that we used to do these Wednesday kind of get-togethers at 9:30 a.m. Every Wednesday we get together as a community. And so then I started encouraging them to exchange gift business cards with somebody and go to lunch with that person. Because I understood, like, if we don't, and not somebody that But if we don't start doing that, we won't be the community that we try to talk about. Like everybody doesn't know each other, right? But we can get to a place where more people can know each other if we're willing to step out of our comfort zone.
Yep.
Take somebody to lunch. Yeah, reach over. And also, you never know. I think the benefit of that can be so great because, like you were talking about, finding people who are expert matters in certain things. Like the more people you know, the more opportunity you're going to have to know people who may be good at something that you're going to at some point need that person's expertise.
I tell young people that, like, network.
Oh, yeah. I tell people all the time, I was like, I can't remember last time I filled an application. You know, because people know who I am.
People know I know Heady. They're like, oh, he must be legit because he know Heady Coleman. Everywhere I go, Heady, oh, yeah, you know.
Yeah. But no, it's so true. It's like, I tell people the greatest thing I could have ever done for my life was start the We Tell Stories event in 2000.
Yeah.
You know, and because of that event, I mean, it's like most of the things that you see probably has stemmed from We Tell Stories, which was a platform of networking and getting the people together. And so, so it's so good. All right, I just got a series of questions, and you can answer with one word or however you want to. So if there's a billboard that everybody in the world could see, what would it say?
I would have to have a J. Cole quote, "Love yours."
Love yours.
Yeah. Like that, I listen to that song a lot. That song, "Love Yours," really much talks about like embracing who you are in your process. So
that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
That was a good question.
Best gift under $100
that I've gotten, or
that you've gotten.
Best gift I've gotten, I would say my daughter last Father's Day created this thing at her school, her picture in it, and she painted around it. And I still have it hanging up. That was a beautiful gift. Yeah.
That's cool. You wake up tomorrow, where are you going? You can go anywhere you want.
Ooh, wake up tomorrow, I'll go anywhere?
Yeah.
I would definitely probably go to Panama, where I'm from, go see my family.
Okay.
Yeah. I haven't seen them in a while.
Nice.
Yeah.
How long did you live in Panama?
So I was born there. I lived there up until 10. From 2 to 10, I was on an Army base. So at 2, my mom met my stepdad. Which I immediately they got married and I was on the Army base. But my biological father is still there, and a lot of my siblings and first cousins are still there on my mom's side. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So do you have any family in Lawton?
Nope, just my mom. And my brother's up. He's in the city, Oklahoma City, but my mom's still in Lawton.
Your mom's still in Lawton. Man, okay, so you're going to Panama. You wake up tomorrow. Okay. You got
I'll take my daughter to see Panama. I want her to be exposed to that, too. Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
You got $1 million. What are you doing with it?
Oh, $1 million. I got $1 million. I'm building a transitional center, a transitional homeless shelter for kids that are transitioning out from the age of 18 to 24. I would build that with all-encompassing services to help young people be independent.
Is that Job Corps? No.
Similar, but
Okay.
I imagine like Job Corps, Pivot, Homeless Alliance, all in one.
All in one.
Paradigm shift, all Heady Coleman, everybody in one building.
All in one spot.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
We can't walk away without talking about Motivate.
Motivate, yeah. Yes, let's talk about it.
Tell
So Markland Motivates is my nonprofit. It's really just, again, an idea, a passion of mine. Again, like one of the things I always harvest and plot on is like, what am I doing for my community that I come from? Like, I owe so much to Lawton and the people that I surrounded myself with. And again, I owe a lot of my success to the people at my old community. And so like I wanted to like do something that would be representative of like me. And so I created this foundation that was centered on, originally it was just like to give scholarships to my old high school. Then I seen the need, of course, with like a lot of the racial tension we were having, the political polarization. I wanted to create a organization of men, myself, to help other young men who I know deal with some of the things that I deal with. So Markland Motivates has grown to be a community service nonprofit that serves young black men, helping them transition. We talked about earlier, also financial literacy and community mental health. Like, what does that look like from a framework that men like them can really help them break down some of those generational cycles.
That's good.
Yeah, so we give out scholarships every year, and we do mentoring. And so I'm looking to grow that to do more community-based mental health programs specifically for impoverished black men dominated communities.
That's good. That's good. So, I want to make sure that we talked about the the tiny houses.
Yeah,
for
tiny
Pivot.
Pivot. Yeah,
We
shout
got
out
to
to
at least
Pivot.
touch base
Shout
on
out
it, right?
to Pivot, man. That's my family.
Yeah.
Jennifer Goodrich, that's my girl.
Yeah, man.
She's a great leader. You talking about leader? You need to have. She's a great leader.
Is she a great leader?
She's an amazing leader.
Yeah, I need to have her on.
Yeah, you need to have her
Can
on.
you
the
make?
show. I can make that happen.
Can you make that happen for me?
I could try.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do an email introduction.
Yeah. She knows you. She came to you spoke at TSB and then
She has to say she used one of my quotes, didn't she?
Yeah. She used one of your quotes.
Yeah, just do an email introduction. See what we can make happen. So, talk to just share. Pivot starts building these tiny houses. You were a pivotal piece to making that happen.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the heart behind it.
So let me tell you, we were transitioning and rebranding our organization, and we had this idea to operate under 5 domains. And then in that 5 domains, there was going to be a subject matter person for each domain. And so I was appointed to be the housing subject matter expert, which you talk about coming up with challenges. So at the time, housing was the biggest need, still is, and the least resource. So at the time, like, I didn't know, a lot of people were calling me looking for housing, but I didn't have a lot of resources.
When you say they, were calling students?
Students, other providers, teachers, counselors, they were calling.
Gotcha.
And these young kids these transitional age kids were experiencing homelessness. A lot of them were couch surfing, and they were looking to really gain some type of housing. And so I went out and found what other organizations had housing resources. So I really engulfed myself into the Continuum of Care Circle coordinated entry, which is led with providers around Oklahoma City through the Homeless Alliance. So really learned about all the different other providers. So then I believe the grant, the funding part of it was a grant written, and then we got this idea to build tiny homes for transitional age youth. So I was in on the foundational side when it comes to the program aspect of it. What they would do, how they would get in, what that looks like from kind of a case manager behavior lens, right? And so had that whole idea, was a part of writing up the policies and procedures, the intake process, and then actually, like, what does that look like as far as, like, my staff was over, like, the case management piece. So we had one, which happened to be one of my clients, and then we built the first 3, and then 6, we operated 6, and now they just opened 20. So that framework I think is forward thinking, and with the current housing climate, it really gives youth a very space where they can transition, right? Mm-hmm. So we're talking kids that age out of foster care that oftentimes have nowhere to go for no fault of their own, kids that get in and out of detention centers, kids that if you don't go to college or the military, like, where are you going to go? How are you going to earn a living? So that allows young people to have the housing need and then gain life skills that are essential for long-term success. So having somebody to come in and teach them how to clean up, teach them life skills, teach them how to apply for jobs, really that coordinated community entry, like, I was a part of really establishing that and really helping other staff work together for the betterment of the kids. So now they've just grown, and they're going to continue to grow exponentially and be kind of like, I think, the expert when it comes to transitional housing for young people.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
In learning this process, I can only see them becoming the go-to people to learn how to do this.
And I think, again, we're very reactive as a society. So with this housing epidemic we're experiencing, with the housing market, inflation, unfortunately for young people, even older people, like, it's just not a lot of resources. So what does that look like? What is a model for that? And I think a lot of people will look at Pivot's example of, like, how do you create a framework for transition, right? Like, how do you get young people from A to B? And I think Pivot has the model for that, considering they have kind of like a one-stop shop for coordinated services when it comes to kids that are aging out or in those transitional years, 16 to 24. Yeah.
Man, so cool.
Yeah.
So cool, man. Thanks for the work you do.
Man, I'm trying. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
trying to be like you when I grow up. I'm trying to be like you.
No, seriously, keep it up, man.
Yeah.
And man, I just keep praying for you that you continue to do well and serve your daughter and getting ready to get married. And
Workforce Community Hope Center, we're building. We're currently, our next phase is going to reopen. And I'm excited because we're going to be one of its kind in this region. really looking at being a one-stop shop for resources. So helping people identify their immediate needs with the hopes of getting them engaged long-term by doing cross-sector partnerships with other workforce employment type services. So what does that look like for people that have barriers? So I'm really excited about that work. I'm going to tap into my Heady Coleman skills and be a leader. So
Come on, you got
I'm really excited about it.
Where can people find you online?
So I'm on all social media platforms, Norman Markland, in Markland too on Instagram. You can definitely look up, you can Google Markland Motivates. You can see a little bit of work I do with my foundation. And you can also look up, I'm in the Department of Human Services for Workforce Hope Community Center, and learn more about what we're doing.
Spell that Markland.
Markland.
Yep, Markland Motivate.
Yep.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for hitting that play button again for another episode of the Heady Coleman Podcast. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, go win.